Coast2Coast Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Kumont. Super excited to be back. Thank you for all the love and support for the first episode. I think we got a good episode here. A lot of fun topics I'm excited to get into. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Awesome week for basketball. We finally get our first wins for these 0-win teams, looking at Langara and 12 Riviere for the Pac West and the Quebec Conference, respectively. Pretty exciting wins. For Langara, they played Camosun in the Pac West back-to-back schedule. They traveled to Camosun, and that first game is their win. And I think that was a really exciting game. Got to the free throw line a whole bunch. I liked their aggression. Something that I think they've really struggled with over the course of the season is attacking the rim. And not only just attacking the rim, but not just heaving the ball up, actually attacking the basket, getting the fouls, getting to the foul line, and then hitting those foul shots. Langara's really struggled to hit foul shots this season, which has unfortunately been a bit of a trend for this program for the last couple of years. At least since COVID, have really struggled to hit free throws. That trend still continues this season, but I really liked their performance on, I think it was Friday night they played. Their following game, they did lose kind of convincingly to Camosun. Good win for Camosun there. I think it's tough to stay motivated after such a huge win for them they've played really well throughout the previous 10 games, but have struggled to turn that into results. So not too surprised they lose the following game, but exciting weekend, huge win for them. Really happy for them, really happy for the coach as well, getting his first win in Pac West play. So I think Langara's got a really bright future, excited for what they did there. And then going all the way to Quebec, 12 Riviere also getting their first win over Lennoxville, a team that I think is good, but has been, I think, a little overrated in Lennoxville. 12 Riviere at home, a huge comeback. I think they hit 2 or 3 threes late down the stretch and then clinched it with free throws, which I think was really cool to see. An exciting game. Honestly, it was really cool to see them after the buzzer goes. The bench rushes the center court, and they're jumping and cheering as if they just won the championship. So that was really cool to see. A fun broadcast. And that Lennoxville team bounces back their next game. So not a team that's a real pushover. Even though I've not loved them the most this season, admittedly. A program that I think it's a good win, quality win. Kind of some trends I want to talk about from this last week that I've really noticed, especially watching these teams, or paying more attention to these teams that have one or fewer wins, is the sidearm outlet passes. So these passes around the horn, they're going from guard to guard or guard to wing passes as well. There are these sidearm passes, but these make a defensive stop, and then you see someone breaking away for streaking down the court, and the outletter is just heaving the ball sidearm style. And it's either getting picked off, it's going too far, and then out of the reach of the person who's breaking out, and it's just leading to an immediate turnover. So they've worked so hard to get a defensive stop, and they just throw it away. And I'm noticing that this is a trend of teams that struggle to score, which tend to be our weaker teams. So they're teams, again, with one or fewer wins. Just across the board, I think a team that was really apparent this last weekend, Okanagan hosted Capilano back-to-back games. And it's a team that plays a little looser, Okanagan, admittedly, but they were just throwing the ball away. They finally, get a stop on defense. Someone gets out, covered, but gets out, and the outletter just heaves it. And then Capilano got the ball right back. And this happened pretty regularly in that game. There's a couple other games that come to mind. I think, was it Kings out in the Maritimes? They did this a couple times too, against Mount St. Vincent. A game that they were in for 3 quarters and then just falls apart in that 4th quarter for them. So I just like the sidearm pass. It's these teams that really struggle on defense to get stops, and then I think they just get excited that they finally have a fast break opportunity and they heave it instead of it's a missed opportunity. You I don't think these players can necessarily throw the ball that distance in a normal pass, and so they're heaving it because their teammate is open, relatively open. And I think it's just a poor play. And I do feel for these teams and players that finally get an opportunity for a fast break when they really have to fight for it. But I would love to see these teams kind of slow it down ever so slightly, make normal transition passes, where that means you have to make the extra pass, or you just miss the opportunity for the transition, like slow it down entirely and just walk it up the court, or just go into your normal half-court offense. I think that as a coach, you would much rather get the full possession, even if it's not in transition, than attempting a highly inconsistent pass to maybe get a transition bucket. And when we look at percentages for field goal attempts, some of our best teams shoot 40% from the field, and so you're not even converting on all your fast break layups. I mean, watching some of the games this weekend, teams got fast break layup opportunities and then blew the layup, and that happens across the board. So I think prioritizing getting a quality look over maybe getting a rushed opportunity. We'd love to see some of these teams that are at the bottom of the table clean that up a little bit. I'm not saying that these teams at the top don't also do this, but I think that's really apparent when these teams that struggle to score points, get wins, etc., are making these kind of mistakes. I think that's where they could move up the rankings and get wins if they clean up this transition game. Kind of touching into what I touched on in the beginning with wins for these teams that have not won yet or haven't won before. Langara and Trois-Rivières. Free throws. Free throws were huge this weekend. There's too many games for me to list off here, but top of mind, there are 3 games that really stuck out to me. The first being UAA beating NAIT out in Alberta. NAIT is leading late in that game. UAA hits some huge shots, puts them up by 3. NAIT has not, with no time on the clock, gets fouled on a 3-point attempt, and she hits 2 out of 3 free throws. Game's over. This has got some other things going in there that NAIT could have cleaned up to win the game, but at the end of the day, hitting those free throws is the difference. NAIT doesn't hit the Ooks don't hit their free throws at the end of the game, and UAA beats them. And so that's a game that I think NIT probably wants to take back the last 2 minutes of hit any of their free throws. I didn't look at the exact numbers, but just from a game feel, would want to take that back. And then Red Deer beats St. Mary's, and they had a back-to-back, which is kind of fun and a little uncommon out in Alberta. But Red Deer Poly beat St. Mary's in the first of the back-to-back. And I think largely that, if you're St. Mary's, similar to NIT, you want to take back the last 3 minutes of that game. They missed some crucial free throws down the stretch. Red Deer takes care of business. There was also some questionable game clock management at the end of that game where St. Mary's doesn't foul. There's 50 seconds or 40 seconds left on the clock, and they're not fouling, and they're down at least 1 possession. Some questionable choices there. They run it back the next game and just blow out Red Deer, and it's a moot point. But if you're St. Mary's, that's one that kind of got away from you. That you definitely could have won. Weird officiating game too, not in terms of bad officiating. I think 3 people fouled out on both teams, so an interesting game, kind of a must watch. If I'm going back and creating a list of 20 or so games at the end of the season on rewatch, this Red Deer versus St. Mary's one. I think in terms of rotation management and some clock management stuff, some really interesting things here. But all in all, back on the free throws points, Red Deer hit their free throws, St. Mary's didn't down the stretch, and Red Deer pulls it out. Langara, like I kind of mentioned about, I liked their aggressiveness. They got to the line, and they finally hit their free throws. And I think ultimately that's why they beat Camosun. Camosun's in that game the entire time. Though Glengarry at points stretches out to, I think, an 8-point lead, a 10-point lead at one point, Camosun is in the game the entire time. And it's really those free throws from all 4 quarters from Glengarry that really seals the deal. So I think going forward, we're almost like the winter break. So a lot of opportunities for individual players to practice their free throws. I was looking at percentages for one of our future segments, and not loving these free throw percentages. There's some schools that do pretty good. There's a couple schools in the 80s and high 70s, but a lot of 50s, a lot of 60s. And if you're these programs wanting to get wins, I think that's a glaring hole. We saw this weekend some teams that really needed wins got wins because of those free throws. Moving on to a little fun segment, the belts. In terms of our conference belts, quick reminder of how this works. Going from last season, whoever won the championship, the conference championship, has their conference belt. So in the Pac West, that was VIU, and then across the board, Alberta's was SAIT, Ontario's was Mohawk, Quebec's was Saint Jean, and then the Maritimes was Mount St. Vincent. So most of the schools that I just listed are still undefeated. Mount St. Vincent, Saint Jean, and Mohawk continue their undefeated streaks. We got in Alberta, SAT. The belt, I think, right now is in the hands of Briarcrest, which is kind of fun. And then in terms of in Pac West, we got a change this week. Douglas College beats Columbia Bible College at Columbia Bible College in the second of the back-to-backs in a very convincing fashion. It's actually the game that I'm playing right now in the background. Good win from them. I think a solid win from Columbia Bible College the night before, or 2 nights before. Just sort of a classic, wear you down, get some fortunate calls that you just steamroll in the other faces and cause Douglas College never to really get into rhythm. So Douglas College bounced back at the win and take the belt from Columbia Bible College, who had held it for several weeks now. So that's kind of fun. I think Douglas College has been the best team, if not, they're a top 3 school in the Pac West. I think they at times have been the best team, the best squad in the Pac West. Super excited as this championship shapes up as we get towards playoffs. I know we're a whole semester away still, but Pac West is like halfway done. I know Douglas College has played their first 12 games, and if I'm them, I'm very, very happy with how this has gone. Only 3 losses to 3 of the other best schools. I think it's a 4-man heat, 4-team heat heading into the second semester. So shout out to Douglas College. Big win against CBC. Going 1-on-1 at CBC is huge. CBC's been power ranked number 1 all season. So huge win there. Speaking of power rankings, we're going to jump into that. So my ratings, I also updated this last week, and we got some fun numbers in that department. But we're going to touch on the rankings first that were published. So some notable movement. So I've had Saint Jean and Mohawk as our 2 best schools, in that order. And now in the power rankings, Saint Jean leapfrogs Columbia Bible College, as does Mohawk. Columbia Bible College slips to that 3rd spot. I still think Columbia Bible College is top 15 power ranked school, but just based off of a whole bunch of factors. Returning squad, they maybe have the MVP again, and Defensive Player of the Year, national champion. I mean, not much has changed in their department. They have some pieces, they have the wins. I don't, in terms of efficiency and that kind of stuff, this team just wins. It's not necessarily the prettiest. I think I totally understand from a power ranking standpoint why they're on this list. I don't think they've played top 15 basketball, and that's why I have ratings. Some notable other additions. Augustana, or UAA, they join the top 15, I think, for the first time. They were not in it last week, so super exciting for them. They had, again, that... No, they were. They were last week. They were 15. So they make a nice jump from 15th to 8th with that crucial win against NAIT, who has been the last few weeks high in the power rankings. NAIT is still on there. Unconfirmed with his power rankings if it's 3 schools from each conference, but from the last 4 weeks, it is every week 3 teams from each conference. It leads me to believe that it's 3 teams from each conference, which I think is fine. I have a nitpick this week, and that is in the form of Seneca. I think that Seneca out of Ontario, or the OCAA, I don't want to assume that they're out of Ontario, I just assumed because of the conference they play in. I think that they have been a top 15 school. They started off the season playing some pretty weak schools and running up a pretty strong win-loss column. That being said, I think that their play in the last couple weeks has been really strong against better opponents, and that their strength schedule is good enough, especially in comparison to some of these other schools. Like I said, Columbia Bible College does not have, I think, the efficiency that warrants them being a a top 15 school right now. I don't think they've played quality enough basketball to be there. Whereas Seneca, I think that they've played some weaker opponents, but they've, I think, proven themselves. Like from a net efficiency point, it's 0.32. Now for reference, 1.00 is the highest you can be. No school's even close to that. I think I think Seneca is the highest, the most efficient. The most efficient team in the OCAA as of today, with that 0.32. The next closest is, I think it's Mohawk, who's 7-0, 8-0, just beat Humber in a really exciting match also that I haven't gone to talk about, but that was an awesome match in between the 2 best teams out in Ontario. But yeah, so Seneca is the most efficient team in Ontario, and they're not on this top 15 list. I do understand the respect given to Humber, Loyalist, and Mohawk, who I do think are better teams. I will note, I do think those are the 3 best teams out in Ontario for a bunch of reasons. I think Loyalist and Mohawk are the best defensive teams. I think Humber, at its best, is the best defensive team. And there's a bunch of stats, just basic stats we can look at that back that up. But when we look at Seneca, they are a top 4 team, and I think that they're better than some of these other teams we have on this list. Unfortunately, I do think that the addition of Holland to this top 15 list, I like Holland. I've enjoyed how they play. I generally enjoy the style of play of the Maritimes. That being said, they've won 60% of their games. They can sort of hang with the better teams, but I'm going to pick Mount St. Vincent, and I'm going to pick St. Thomas every time. I think both those squads are significantly better than Holland, and I'm not even certain that Holland's the 3rd best team. I would argue that Mount Allison is kind of in there as the 3rd best team. That's who I'd pick. No disrespect to Holland. And so I think that there are other teams, not even just Seneca, that are better and have played better than Holland. And so for Seneca not to be on this list, I feel like is, I don't know, it's a nitpick of mine. I think it's a big admission. They're, my ratings, I have them 3rd. I have them the 3rd best team in the country. In the OCAA, they're number 1 in field goal percentage with 40.6% from the field. They're 4th in 3-point percentage at 25.7. They're 3rd in rebounds per game with 48.5. They're 1st in turnovers with only 12 a game. And then they're 3rd in assists with 17.3 assists per game. In all these stats are within the OCAA. And so I just think statistically they've put together a package that is comparable to these other schools that are from the OCAA in the top 15, Loyalist, Mohawk, Humber, but Mohawk and Loyalist specifically on the offensive side of the ball, their numbers are right in there. I mean, like, Mohawk specifically, I think is like within one position of all of these to Seneca, and so for them not to be in there, they have the win record. Statistically, they're putting up an incredible season. They have now some quality wins against some stronger opponents. I think it's a big omission not to have them in the top 15, and I hope that we don't have to lose one of these other schools to gain Seneca. Like, I hope that we don't have to lose Loyalist or Humber to get Seneca onto this list, because I do think they deserve to be there. I think that they're one of the 4 best schools in Ontario and one of the 15 best schools in the country. So with that aside, the Power Rankings, I think they're pretty good this week. No real huge complaints. We'll quickly touch on a couple interesting rating things that I saw this week. Because more games have been played, some of my numbers have balanced out. Some of the, I think, inefficiencies of my rating system, which is just I calculate teams' efficiencies and then I add it to their strength of schedule and bumps up this beautiful little number. And because of the number of games played, I think that some of it has warped some of my math. The Pac West is pretty low in general in this rating. And I think that's mostly because they've played more games, and so their scores and their statistics have kind of like balanced out. There's fewer anomalies or games that radically affect their numbers, outliers. But we're looking for outliers. They have fewer outliers. Whereas we look at like St. Mary's, which has been at the top of my ratings for all 3 weeks so far. They finally have come down a few. I think they're number 1 for a couple of weeks, and now they're 7th. Yeah, I had them first, 3rd, and then slowly they're 7th. And they don't have a huge. They're still in a negative wins, but they had that one game against Northwestern Poly where they score 103 points or 107 points in a super efficient fashion. They have another win that was really efficient as well. And then their losses are sub-10 point losses. And so I do think that they're very good. And mathematically, they're 6th. And that makes sense, and that's where they should be. But I do think that is because of the few number of games they've played. They've only played 6 games or so. That does skew the math there, whereas Douglas College has played 12 games. There's no team in the Pac West that have played less than 10. And we still have schools that have played 5 games. I think that's the fewest games played. St. Lawrence might be the fewest with 4 or 5 games. So just because of the sample size, I think once we get to the end of the fall semester and we go on winter break, I think that those numbers will kind of balance out and we'll see better representation of where teams are from a mathematical standpoint.